Hey everyone, before we get started, we just wanted to mention that we were invited to be part of a really cool video interview with Ken over at Sledgehammer Horror for his My First Horror Movie series. And if you are interested in learning more about the first experiences Joseph and I both had as children with horror films, please check it out. The link is posted below. Thanks.
That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about The House by the Cemetery, Lucio Fulci's 1981 classic horror film that was, I believe, quite infamous upon release. Blue Underground is presenting a new 4K Ultra HD version of the film, which became available August 25th, 2020. This is actually your second Lucio Fulci film.
Oh, I didn't know that. What's the first one?
I know I said it. Zombie. We reviewed Zombie.
You did say that. You did.
This is of a much different speed. Of course, Fulci was known as the godfather of gore, which is evident in this film. But this is a much more complex, ornate plot.
It is, and trying to explain it, I feel like is going to be tedious. I did enjoy this film. It was fun. And the sort of complicated plot is what made it enjoyable to me.
Yeah.
I like the texture of films like this, and so it works, but trying to explain the story is a lot.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
It is. Okay. So the film opens with a woman, a topless woman,
Of course.
in a house.
There are breasts in the very first scene.
Yeah, who hears a noise, checks it out, ends up getting killed and dragged into a cellar. Okay, cut to...
But it's also like this dilapidated house that apparently she was there to have sex with her boyfriend. It's very entertaining.
Yeah, we've all been there.
Yeah.
So, cut to New York, and we meet a couple named...
The Boyles.
Norman and Lucy, and their little son, who's probably like 4 or 5, named Bob, which I find so amusing. Okay, so Bob is sitting in the car talking to a girl who is like across the street, like far away, far from earshot. And he's talking to her in like a normal voice, and the girl's talking back. So obviously creepy. Then we cut to, after he's done talking, we see him holding a doll, which is like a replica of
This girl.
We also see that, because they're out like in the city, like shopping, we see like a storefront with mannequins.
That's when they get to Boston.
That's right.
That's when they get to Massachusetts.
That's right.
So this family is about to move. The Lucy, the wife, played by Catherine MacColl, thinks that they're just getting out of the city to this like a more quaint lifestyle. But little does she know that her husband has brought her to this specific place, this house by the cemetery, where his old colleague killed his mistress and then himself. And so he's kind of going there with ulterior motives to investigate it. But she recognizes the house as soon as they get there. They're like, hey, isn't that the house in the picture?
So the house that girl, the topless girl in the beginning was killed in, is the same house the Boyles are moving into, which is also the house his colleague killed his mistress and himself in.
And the locals call it the Freudstein house.
But the real estate agent who's giving them the keys calls it like Oak Manor.
Yeah.
So she's trying to hide the fact that it's like this infamous house. But they get there and they're sort of looking around. There's a cellar door that's like, it's not just locked, it's like boarded up. So that's weird. And then all of a sudden a young woman shows up named Anne.
That is a babysitter apparently procured by the realtor?
Yeah, and they just say, okay, great. So she's the babysitter now.
But she also looks just like this bushy-eyed mannequin.
So when they're out in the city in Massachusetts, they see a storefront and there are these mannequins. So she looks like one of the mannequins. The little girl, Bob was talking to, her name's May. She was also one of the mannequins. May shows up again. So May sort of pops up and talks to Bob. And she explains, well, Lucy...
the mom.
Well, even before that, that night, Norman finds Anne, the babysitter, looking all crazy, trying to like open the cellar door. So that's weird.
She just chastises her like, Anne.
Yeah. Then May pops up and tells Bob like, Yeah, May shows Bob the tombstone of her mom and says like, oh, but she's really not buried there. Like, great. Then Lucy, the mom, discovers a tombstone in the house and is explained to her that in that region of the country, there are tombstones in the house because the ground outside is too cold or frozen, whatever. So what happens after that? Oh, Norman has to go back to New York.
He has to go back to New York to do more research about what happened to his colleague.
For some reason,
And the house.
So then there's like a little creepy assistant at this like research place, but Norman finds out that his colleague was
Actually, before that happens, the bat scene.
Does the bat scene happen before that?
Yeah, because once he gets back from New York, we're basically in the throes of the third act.
They go down into the Lucy and Norman go down into the basement because they hear a noise, and now because Lucy's freaked out that there's this tombstone in the house, and a bat attacks them. And it's a really funny scene, but a bat attacks Norman like on his hand and will not let go.
Yeah, it's like a snapping turtle.
He stabs the bat, and it takes a long time for this bat to be removed.
And then he has to go to the hospital.
While they're at the hospital getting Norman mended, the real estate agent shows up to say that, no, you got it out of order. I was right. Before that happens, Norman goes to New York because he wants to see what happened to his colleague, because that's why he moved to the house in the first place, was to try to investigate. And he finds out that his colleague was doing weird shit in the house, like researching like demonics and all missing people. He also gets a hold of an audio cassette explaining that the Dr. Freudstein who lived in the house prior was a surgeon who was doing these illegal experiments. So he says, yes, we need to move. They tell the real estate agent. She says, we can't move you for like a few days. Then the bat scene happens. While they're at the hospital, the real estate agent shows up at the house because she has good news. She found a property sooner than she thought. And while she's there, an entity kills her. Like brutally kills her.
Very violently.
Blood everywhere. So when they return from the hospital, they find Anne cleaning up the blood. Like a lot of blood. And Lucy's like, what are you doing? And Anne says, I'm just getting coffee ready.
Like, okay. But then when does the scene happen with the babysitter? Because the babysitter at one point loses track of Bob, and when she goes to find him, she goes to look for him in the basement.
And she gets her head chopped off.
And then gets stuck in the basement and murdered by the same entity, even though she's kind of fashioned as...
She's kind of part of that world.
Being colluding with that world. She cleans up the blood of the realtor. It doesn't... There are
holes.
There are holes, yeah.
Okay. It culminates with Bob getting locked in the cellar.
And he also witnessed the decapitation of the babysitter, which traumatizes him.
Yes, but his mom doesn't believe him. But Bob, she just thinks her son is troubled. But Bob gets locked in the basement, and Lucy and Norman are trying to get him out. And in another really cool scene, Norman ends up getting a hatchet to like knock down the door Shining style, but the entity is sort of like pushing Bob's head against the door. So the hatchet is sort of like barely missing him. They are able to get in. Norman does confront the entity, which turns out to be Dr. Freudstein. And he's like this corpse, but he's not dead.
He was a Victorian era physician, and he's like a living corpse. He's described as.
He's like 150 years old. He's not dead. What he's doing is his victims, he's taking like their blood. There's some science explaining, like he's taking their blood cells to like regenerate his own, and that's how he's able to live so long. But he looks like a zombie. Norman does attack Dr. Freudstein, but Dr. Freudstein gets the upper hand, and then
when he stabs Dr. Freudstein, his insides are apparently
all maggots,
like maggots and what looks like fecal matter,
which was also gross.
Yeah.
But Dr. Freudstein prevails. He kills everyone except Bob. But May shows up, the little girl, with Mary Freudstein. So when May in the beginning says my mom's not in that burial spot, it's because she's still out here kicking. May and the mom Mary sort of take Bob by the hand and walk away like now he's part of their family. The end. Mm-hmm. Okay. This movie was fun.
For a film called House by the Cemetery, you don't get a lot. There are a couple scenes in the cemetery, but it's not apparent. Like,
their house is by the cemetery.
It is, but
that's it.
But based on that being the title, you'd think that'd have something to do.
My bigger question is, so this film is an Italian director.
Lucio Fulci.
And the actors are Italian, but it's in the United States, and they're attempting to speak English, but it's clear, so we can see that they're mouthing in English or trying to speak English, but it's dubbed over.
Well, that was common for all of those films.
So my question is, what was the function of like Italian filmmakers coming to the United States with Italian actors to make like English language films?
Probably money. Like, it depends on where the funding was from, but also that was standard operating procedure for the Italian film industry. Those were all of those.
So obviously the Italian...
They dubbed their own films.
No, but so the Italian market must have wanted to see like American films.
I don't know. I'm sure, but I don't know if per se that was the driving force for Fulci to be there.
I mean, it's splendid for me to watch today, so I think it's great, but it just seems like such an interesting way to approach like...
But it's just like, Leone's, the spaghetti westerns and Argento's films, which were filmed... in Italian, all those people are dubbed over anyway.
Right, but my question is, like, what was the function of that? Like,
I think it's cheaper because they didn't really have to worry about sound so much because they just would go record the audio later.
Well, now that I'm saying it, because I guess my point was, why wouldn't they just come to the U.S. and hire American actors who can speak the language? But then the director wouldn't be able to direct them. Mm-hmm. So now it makes sense.
And I think the children were speaking in Italian as they're acting. I think I read.
Yes, I think the children, but clearly some of the adults are speaking English.
Yes.
Like the leads at points are clearly.
So this is part of what's considered Fulci's Gates of Hell trilogy, which includes City of Living Dead, which is 1980, and The Beyond, which was the same year as this, 1981. And they all feature Catherine MacColl, who's Catriona is her real name.
That's Lucy?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, she's in all three of them.
I only have notes about some of the cool scenes I thought, like the opening with the knife through the skull that's in the trailer. Mm-hmm. That was a really great start. Mm-hmm. Like, it set a nice tone. Okay, the highlight of the film for me is Bob.
Oh, he's such a cute little kid.
He is so cute.
Yeah.
But the actor doing his dubbing is like 16.
Oh, yeah.
That little boy sounds like a young man, and it is hilarious.
Like you want there to be more speaking scenes.
Oh my god,
it's so good.
Someone needs to like edit like all of Bob's speaking scenes. Mm-hmm. It's so good.
The bat scene is
the bat scene is so good, and I wrote down like, how does the bat screech and bite at the same time? Because that bat is just screaming, but also it won't let go. It's really good.
The babysitter looks like a cross between Brooke Shields and Cara Delevingne.
Yeah, her eyes are pretty intense with her bushy
eyebrows. Those eyebrows are terrible.
Oh, there's a scene when Lucy is being dragged down the stairs.
Oh, yes.
And her head is hitting
every
the steps. Like,
what do we say? Oh, that's the year 2020 right there.
Yeah.
I also really like Dagmar Lassander, who is probably, I'd say, the most notable cast member. She's the realtor.
Oh.
And
oh, yes.
She'd been in a number of prominent films in the Italian film industry from the decade before, like The Forbidden Photos of a Lady Above Suspicion, or I think she's in Fulci's version of The Black Cat, which is also really good. She's this beautiful redhead, and I don't know. I thought she was kind of funny because she's kind of catty and bitchy, and she has a very violent death scene that I think is also notable. I also like how Dr. Freudstein looks.
Yeah.
Which that name is so ridiculous, like Freud and Frankenstein.
It worked. My final note is there's a quote in the film, and I don't remember who says it, but someone says, "We will never know if children are monsters or monsters are children."
That's the closing.
That's the closing.
That is accredited to Henry James, but I don't think that's Henry James.
My final thoughts are
it's very much obviously this is the year after The Shining, which I think there are a lot of plot similarities with that. This was written by Elsa Briganti, who wrote other Fulci films like Zombie.
you should definitely watch the trailer, because if you watch the little 2-minute trailer, you will want to watch this movie. The extra features, it's a 2-disc set, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of really cool stuff. Like there's an interview with.
They have portioned interviews with the actors playing the parents, the children, Dagmar, Lassander.
Bob grew up to be quite cute, and like him talking about the movie. It's interesting hearing May grown up talking about the movie. The lady, the most well-known lady,
Dagmar Lassander.
I really enjoyed listening to her.
Oh yeah.
She seems like a very elegant lady.
And she was talking about other films in conjunction with House by the Cemetery.
Yeah, so I thought these extra features were actually like worthwhile.
Giovanni Frezza played Bob, who I think at the beginning of his segment says he apologizes for the voices.
Oh.
And
That was the best part.
Silvia Collatina was May, who ended up growing into this beautiful woman. It's kind of fascinating to see that after watching this movie.
Who released this?
Blue Underground, and they also released it at the same time as, which I hope we get to, New York Ripper.
Which yes, I also want to watch. But yeah, I would recommend buying this release.
I think, I haven't seen City of the Living Dead, which is streaming, but I think House by the Cemetery is very fun, but I think The Beyond is a better film about this woman who inherits a hotel that's over one of the 7 gates of hell. That has some great set pieces in it. It's set in Louisiana. This movie's more fun. The Beyond, I think, is overall a better film of these 3 by him.
Well, what would you give it?
3 out of 5, I think is fair. That, he didn't earn the title Godfather of Gore for no reason. He put a lot of effort into fabulous set pieces, and I'm not a person that really focuses on the kills in a horror movie, but these are little works of art, I think, within the narrative.
I would give it 3 out of 5 as well. Anything else?
No, that's it.
All right, bye.
Bye.